Right folks, today we are taking a look at the Arma 3 benchmark. The resolutions that are going to be featured are going to be 1080p, 1440p and 4K. We're going to be taking a look at the graphics presets low, standard, high and ultra. And we're going to be looking at the average performance in game as well as giving a bit of a chat about, what you can expect from your performance. Now the footage in the background is of another Arma 3 benchmark which is available in the workshop so you can compare yourself. The details are basically it's a 2.5 minute benchmark with some AI that runs a sort of testing scenario. I did 2 runs and averaged out the figures, and then hopefully that should give you some accuracy. Now as always, part variance, run to run variance does happen, but it should at least give you an idea on your parts and what you want to upgrade or not upgrade. Now the system that's been used is a Ryzen 9 5950X at stock. It's a RTX 3080 Zotac Trinity OC, but I do have a small 100MHz overclock on the core just so it can boost to 2000, and the RAM is 32GB DDR4 3600 CL16, get that tongue twister out of the way, megahertz RAM, and it's on a Noctua NHD15 air-cooled system. Now straight into the benchmarks. In 1080p low, we're going to be seeing a 61 low, 125 max and an 87.2 average. Again, give or take variance of 3 or 4 frames due to shadow play and AI changing in the run, but these should be accurate figures. Standard, we had a drop to 47, drop to 103 max and an average of 70. High performed pretty much identical, you could argue variance. And ultra, you definitely had a lower low and a lower max and a lower average, so ultra definitely did test the system a bit here. We're nowhere near maxing out the system's capability. Obviously it's a very sort of 2-core heavy game, I guess, which we'll get into, or a sort of less than multi-core threaded game. But as we move on to the benchmark 1440p, you're going to see that actually not a lot changes. Interestingly, a few numbers go up. The low on low goes to 57 and the max jumps to 127 and it's a higher average of 84. Standard, there's going to be an average FPS of 70. Again, the difference between standard and high, you could argue, is variance. Even at 1440p, similar sort of traits happen. And again, at ultra, it's going to drop down to a 55 average with a 79 max and a 36 low. So this one was definitely below that 60 FPS magic mark. Personally, I would say 1440p high looked almost very similar to ultra, and it's worth not really going for ultra to get that extra bit of frame rate. When we take a look at 4K low, similar to StarCraft 2 actually, these sort of games that really don't utilize the full capability of a system tend to do well at 4K low because it sort of stresses it out but not too much to tank your frames. So a max of 132, low of 53 and an average of 88. Again, standard and high. Here there's a little bit more variance. I wouldn't call this run to run variance. I would definitely say you're going to get more frames on standard than high. And at ultra, you are going to be once again seeing a drop to 50 FPS with a much lower 29 low and a 71 max. But it's still handling it relatively well. But again, as we go into the game and we have a little bit of a chat about kind of some thoughts before we jump into some gameplay, at 4K Ultra, the graphics card actually was being pushed to 99%, and it used around about 10 to 14% of your CPU. It was 11GB system RAM was used pretty much, and about 7GB VRAM at max on this benchmark. 1440p is roughly going to be the same, except the GPU wasn't being pushed nearly as much. It was 33 to 70%, 77, sorry, and honestly, was around the 40% area where it kind of stayed and hung there. Now at 1080p Ultra, the GPU has been used even less. It was around 27%. The CPU was 10 to 14 again, and again, system RAM was 11GB, and this time rather than using the 5.5GB VRAM at 1440, it used just about 5GB. So there's going to be a bit of gameplay running in the background whilst we have a quick wrap up. Now obviously this game, it's not optimized for 16 core 32 thread. It's not fully optimized for a 3080 because you can see at 1440p it's not even 99% usage. You were only seeing 99% usage out of that 4K. But it's sort of even questionable if it was even using it, to be honest. But when you jump into game, now the benchmark is obviously a taxing thing, that's the idea of a benchmark. The gameplay you're seeing here is, I figured, of all the runs I did, I thought 1440p high seemed like a good midpoint. It wasn't quite the graphics of the 1080p low, even though you do get a, edge case a few more frames. It's not the taxing nature of 4K Ultra, and I think you get a little bit higher lows than the 1440p Ultra, so I decided just to play for a little bit at 1440p high. And it was a good experience. The last time I played this game was on a GTX 970 with a i7 4790K, and I remember going into town and just been physically unplayable even on low. There could have been optimization work done on the game, that's definitely a possibility, but it did run a lot better. It was chilling in like 50, 60, 70s in towns. I had a few fights. Running out in the open fields is like, high refresh rate kind of FPS values. Now, unfortunately, I only had a sort of limited amount of time to benchmark this, and the map's enormous, and I'm not an Arma 3 player. I don't play a lot of Arma 3. The reason I had Arma was for the DayZ mod back in the day. So I wasn't able to get into as many massive fights as I'd like, a lot of running around, trying to find people, traversing this big map, not owning all of the DLC to get in all of the servers. But it ran well. Again, is it going to run a lot better than a medium system? Probably not, because I think we're definitely limited by the engine in the game itself. But if you are a big time Arma player, and maybe your frame rates are tanking like mine used to do on that 4790K and 970, this obviously could be a big leap for you. Now, theoretically it should be, it's very expensive, but we're not going to be needing a 3080 here, or a 5950X. I reckon if you were to pick up this game and play on a 3060 Ti, a 3070, and you were to pop in a 5600X or a 3900X, because they're more available, or hell, even a 3600X, I think you're going to have a real good time on this game. It's clearly not utilising 8 plus cores or super high-end graphics cards, but it has improved, and I think there is a step up there. So if you're thinking about playing Arma, this probably is an overkill setup for it. You could definitely go for even a 5900X. I think would give you that headroom for future games, maybe games like that utilise it a bit more. But I was impressed with it. Now, should it run better? Absolutely. It's always disappointing to see Arma not be able to hit those high refresh rate 144, 165s, because it is such an intriguing game. It's a game that I think could be superb. It's got huge scale, huge realism, and I always think the optimizations held it back. But it does play it, and if you're a big time Arma player, I thought this might help you. So this is kind of how the game performed. Let me know if that helped. Leave me a like and a comment. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe. You can also check me out live on Twitch. A Twitch Bezos Prime would be greatly appreciated. Or if you want to support the YouTube side of things, you can hit that join button down below. Hopefully this helps inform you of your purchase. Maybe it sways you against it. Maybe it tips you over the edge and you think, you know what, this is kind of the performance I want. Hopefully it just helps, that's all it is. I'm not a professional benchmarker. I ain't got the guy with all the scientific tools, but I can run some tests, run them multiple times, report back, and hopefully it helps you out. So, awesome. Have a great day.